Fitness, emotional warfare, and self-defense. Fitness, emotional warfare, and self-defense. That's correct. Fitness, emotional warfare, and self-defense. There, I've said it 3 times, like Beetlejuice. It should now appear in my mind and provide me with the ability to clearly communicate fitness, emotional warfare, and self-defense. So what is meant by this? Well, first, a disclaimer. Of course, you've heard the saying probably that to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so it is from my own perspective as a fitness professional, as well as a master hypnotist and clinical hypnotherapist, that, and also a practitioner of martial arts, that this comes from. I find it fascinating that you can find the solutions to almost anything in your life when you focus on certain things and gain expertise in them. And again, you can look at it like this way, that whatever type of tool you become, the solution to your, what I like to call pets, P-E-T-S, personal exploration topics rather than problems or issues. So the solutions to, or the way to process your personal exploration topics can be found in those things that you find expertise in. So if you're a mathematician, a lot of the ways that you think logically can help you with your personal exploration topic. As a martial artist, without violence, you can find solutions to your personal exploration topics that way. So it's with this that we are exploring this fitness, emotional warfare, and self-defense. So let's proceed this way. When I often think of this, the movie Inception comes to mind. And it's because, I'm paraphrasing the treatment of the movie of what its synopsis is, which has the plot of the film in part that the the main the main constituents, the main characters in Inception, their service is to provide basically a type of mental self-defense for their clients, because apparently there was a technology that was developed where people are able to go into someone's mind through their dreams and steal information, and that would be an extraction, as they called it in the movie. And the plot of the movie also showed us or told us that an inception, which is putting information into someone's mind and having them think it was their own, was the more difficult thing to do than the extraction. However, I my understanding as a master hypnotist and a clinical hypnotherapist, a self-defense instructor, and a fitness trainer, shows me that that's not entirely accurate if looked at from a certain point of view, and actually it's a more helpful one. As a matter of fact, some time ago, I've done a couple of podcasts as well as and that were based on a blog article that I wrote many years ago that was called Inception, Extraction, Deception, or something like that. Yeah, because even though the plot of the movie, I don't feel like James Cameron or whoever it was who produced and whoever wrote the film was trying to deceive anyone, just that it is deceptive to think that the inception is actually the more difficult thing to do. But how does this fit into fitness, emotional warfare, and self-defense? Well, they're all really the same thing. You're in this world, again, as I said, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So I'm looking at this from the perspective of being a self-defense instructor, a personal fitness trainer, and a clinical hypnotherapist and master hypnotist, right? And one of the first thing that comes to mind that I'm addressing here are what I have seen and observed to be one of the main issues with many people, not everyone, but many people attempting to get a hold of their physical fitness, which also translates into, if you will allow me these terms, their emotional fitness as well as their spiritual fitness, right? So their emotional and spiritual fitness, which is also a concept I've been working on for a long time. Um, it it spawned the name of one of my first websites, which is called HypnoAthletics, Exercising Your Mind, and it comes from a more full mantra that is, hypnoathletics is exercising your mind towards universal harmony and spiritual wisdom through healthy living and self-defense. And so this emotional warfare that I observed is simply this: because of the types of activities that I apply and I engage in my life in order to stay on top of my physical fitness game, right? So what I mean by that is that there are a lot of things that I do that keep me in a top physical shape. For example, I'm 46 years old. I'll be 47 in a couple of months. However, with that, what's really interesting is that I outperform physically people who are actually half my age. I go to the gym every day. And just as an example, something that I've been doing for many years that hasn't slowed down in any way, which is really amazing to me because I do it for fun. I arbitrarily chose my main workout that I do every day to be 5 minute rounds of kickboxing. And and the reason why I chose that is simply because people are obsessed with the Ultimate Fighting Championship, right? The UFC, and which is a form of MMA, not to be confused with multi-message astronomy. Yes, I'm a nerd, but not to be confused. MMA, mixed martial arts, and so many people are obsessed with it, with that sport. And so in the undercard rounds, meaning the fights that are not championship fights, the mixed martial arts competitions, most of them choose to have 3 5-minute rounds. But when there's a championship fight, they choose to have 5 5-minute rounds. And so this is why I've arbitrarily just chosen that, because it seems like in some people's mind it's a gold standard. If you're able to have the endurance and stamina to successfully compete and move as a physical exercise 5 minutes at a time with a 1 minute rest in between times five, right? Then that's a good indicator of some physical fitness. So I do that, and the thing is, as I was saying earlier, and this is making a point here about the activities that I do, is that I also do it because of the fact that they're difficult and that they are difficult to do and they raise my heart rate and they're difficult to carry out, as I do a lot of flashy movements. So not only do I do, front kicks, side kicks, and roundhouse kicks, but I do tornado kicks, and I do kicks that I'm upside down in the air, that are butterfly kicks into the bag, um, L kicks, which in capoeira is called ao batido, which is I'm on one hand and one leg kicks forward on the bag. I do macaco, which comes from the monkey. Macaque is the word in Brazilian Portuguese, which is I do a setup kick, like a fake, where I'll do an inside crescent kick, which turns my back to the bag, and then I do a back handspring on one hand and both feet slam into the bag. So just I do a lot of flashy high energy requirement movements because it forces me to use a lot of energy, and I especially do them when I start to get tired. Now, why am I saying all of that? Well, one, yeah, I'm bragging a little bit, but also this has to do with the emotional warfare part of the physical fitness journey that many of us are finding ourselves attempting to master. And it's because when and you know what just came into my mind was, and this is also making this point here, was something, and I'll be paraphrasing it, but that someone said about Arnold Schwarzenegger. No matter what you think about him, the point is the commentary where they looked at Arnold Schwarzenegger, and a lot of people say this, and they look at his body when he was a bodybuilder, Mr. Universe and all that, and someone said something like, "Well, I would never want to look like that," directly to him, like maybe an interview or something like that. Well, it's great. You do all this, you compete. I would never want to look like that. And Arnold Schwarzenegger's response was, "Don't worry, you never will." I think that's hilarious, just in the point that it makes, because it takes a lot of discipline for him to do that. Now, I don't have, I'm not a bodybuilder, and I actually don't think that it's one of the best things to do. As a matter of fact, when I go to the gym, I it's my personal experience and understanding as a fitness expert for many years that the way that most people go to the gym and exercise is mostly vanity based, where which is form over function, where I am a function over form person, meaning I would rather have the ability to be able to walk upstairs easily, take long walks, to squat down and pick things up, carry groceries, get in and out of my car easily, and live my life in a way that seems easy in comparison to the exercises that I do. And I often compare that to an example that you may be able to understand is you can think about this thought experiment as, imagine filling up a backpack full of heavy rocks, like lead based rocks, and climbing up the side of a mountain or a hill with that on. That's what I look at exercise, intense exercise, as being. You're loading yourself down and doing something that's very difficult so that when you're not in the gym and you're not exercising, everything else in comparison is easy. It feels like it, but it's not that it's easy because you're stronger, right? So you imagine now you take off that heavy weighted backpack and you're not going up a hill, but you're walking on flat ground, and it's simpler in comparison. That's what my understanding. That's what life should feel like. That's why you should be going to the gym. That's what function over form is about. And what's interesting, what I found, is that by focusing on function over form, I actually have a form that for some reason many people seem to admire. They look at my body and they're, wow, you look really good. You look muscular and you're fit, and then da 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 da. Your skin looks great, this and this and that. It has a lot more things to do with the fact that I drink a lot of water and green tea and I sleep a lot, as well as doing physical fitness, and I eat really healthy food. Right? All those things are important as well. But now, getting back to the emotional warfare part, which I've been dancing around here a lot to build up to, is, and that comment that someone made to Arnold Schwarzenegger when they said, I would never want to look like that. And he says, don't worry, you never will, is that many people have reported to me and I've observed struggle with the types of things and the discipline. And that's where the emotional warfare comes in, the discipline that is necessary in order to achieve the types of fitness function, which actually leads to the form that most people are aesthetically looking for, right? When you focus on the function, being able to do things, it actually leads to the form that you want. It actually leads to your body looking in a way that you might find more pleasing. Not everybody, right, wants to look like an Arnold Schwarzenegger. I definitely don't want to look like that. I don't think it's necessary, but I'm in a way, it almost looks like I kind of am doing that somehow, but it's just because of the functions that I do, the 5 minute rounds of kickboxing and pushing and pulling sleds in a certain way. There's my main workouts, right? And when I'm in a gym and when I'm outside, I do a lot of body weight exercises, the body weight squats, the push ups, the pull ups, kicking, flipping, jumping around, and stuff like that. But the emotional warfare comes from the discipline, because what I hear from and what I observe from many people, not everyone, is the difficulty that they're having is doing these things, the especially the the other accessories to fitness, which are specifically things that I mentioned before, the the nutrition aspect and the getting enough sleep and the drinking of water and all these things that we know, right? Things that we already know. That's no surprise to anybody. But we have this emotional warfare. And there are more reasons why I'm calling it warfare as well. Because a lot of times we're at war with the messages that come to us from media outlets, news, radio, television, social media, of course, and also the peer pressure and social pressure for a lot of things, right? It's very difficult to be the person who stands apart. So this is this emotional warfare, because one, it's very difficult to do the things on a daily basis in order to achieve the level of function that you want to have, which again, as I've said, and I'll note over again, leads to the form that many people are looking for. However, the emotional warfare that people are having is many turn to things that they feel like will be quick fixes, shortcuts, and these type of cutting corner solutions to getting there, because it's difficult. We're struggling with this emotional warfare. We're struggling with, well, I don't have the time. Well, I would argue, because many people would agree that we all have the same 24 hours. Now, some of us, like myself, I don't have children, unfortunately. I lost my wife almost 5 years ago, which is another thing that I can relate grief to. As a little side note to lifting weights, people ask me, how do I process it and deal with it? And I say, it's like going to the gym and lifting up 100-pound weight. At first, it feels and seems really difficult. But if you continue lifting it in the right way and consistently, right? And I have to put some explainers on. The right way would be doing things that are healthy. So going to the gym, right? And meditating and doing breathing exercises rather than drinking myself to sleep, which I did for the first 7 months after that happened, right? But but doing things in the right way and consistently, then all of a sudden that 100-pound weight, aka the grief, feels easier. It gets easier, but that's also misleading, right? Because it's not that it gets easier. The mass of the 10 pounds, right, does not get any less, and neither is the force of gravity. It's not getting any less unless you're going to the poles where it's slightly different on the earth, right? It's you're getting stronger. And that's again analogous to climbing up the mountain with the backpack full of lead, right? And you do that and you take it off and then walk on flat ground. It feels easier in comparison. So by consistently lifting the grief or the weight in the right way and consistently, everything else in comparison feels lighter or easier. And but getting to that point and putting together all of those other disciplines, I hear and see the excuses over and over again, because it is an emotional warfare. There's a lot of things that we don't want to give up in order to achieve that function, which leads to the form, right? The function meaning the ability to do things more easily, that are apparently easier because of the work that you put in, which actually leads to the form, that aesthetically pleasing look that people want. Instead, people are going to what they feel like are the quick ways, the shortcuts, the cutting corners, the easy way out, which are so many things, fad diets and pills and so on and so forth. And I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't have anything to say about what people are taking, like a lot of the different things that are prescribed out there. I That's not my domain. I don't think that they're a good idea, but again, I'm no MD. But the struggle, the emotional warfare is the hard way is the actually the easy way, right? Putting in the work every day, the things that are difficult because we want to cut corners and do things in a certain way, and then expect and then wonder why we're not getting the results, which are, why do I still look this way or feel this way? Why am I tired all the time? So on and so forth. Well, because you're fighting with yourself. You're putting your own unnecessary inertia on the movements that and the things that you really want to achieve. I mean, so if you have a certain goal, but you say you don't have time, well, what is it that you're doing to pass time or de-stress? I mean, how many hours? I know that people have probably heard this pushed a lot and just kind of dragged to death this point. But how much time are you spending, as it's called, doom scrolling through social media? How many hours of that? Or how much binge watching of Netflix are you doing? How much how often are you going out every night or every weekend to a bar to have drinks with friends? How much junk food are you eating instead of healthy food? How much of that eating out are you doing instead of cooking at home? So on and so forth. I could go on, right, with the list. This is the emotional warfare that we're dealing with. We 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 want a certain result, but then fight against doing the things that are simple. And I'm specifically using the word simple because it's not easy, but they're simple. That's why perhaps many people don't do those things, because as simple as it is to understand the basic thermodynamics of the more the balance of your calorie input versus your energy output, right? Calories are just a measure of energy. We call them calories; they're really kilocalories if we want to talk physics. But if we put out more energy than we take in food, right? Then if we put out more energy than we take in as energy from our food, then over time we're going to reduce our body mass. That's the simple of it. However, it's also important the kinds of calories that we're putting into our body, because not all of them are processed out of our body or leave our body in the same ways. I've done these experiments on myself over and over again. I created a process, two of them. One was called FAST, and one was called awareness subjective testing. And it's something that I did to work on the testing out different kind of foods in my body. And the other one's called Feast, which is a little bit quicker to follow up on it, which is food express awareness subjective testing. But so again, it's important to understand that simple thing, right? Simple, not easy. And then also the simple but not easy idea of what we have to be doing. See, of course, you may or may not know, but the reason why there are gyms these days are because we as modern humans don't do the same kind of things to get our energy as we used to, right? So we're not foraging, we're not hunting and gathering, most of us anymore. So we're not expending, we're not putting out that energy to get the energy back. That was what a lot of people did. You know, they were out there hunting and foraging and all this other stuff to get their food. So they're putting out physical energy and in order to get it, right? And this is a thing in physics too, right? Which is something that physicists and scientists are trying to do all the time. They're trying to get these over unity engines, which a lot of people call free energy devices and whatnot, right? Where they want to find out how can we put in like 100 joules of energy and get out 200. right? Right? And that's, you know, one of these things that you would like to have that in in your body actually, right? We that's what ideally we should be doing for the most part. If your goal is to reduce body fat and build muscle, this is an oversimplification of it, right? But again, the things that you have to do are being fought against emotionally because there's so many things you want to do. You want to binge watch this show. You want to doom scroll on social media. You want to go to the bar and have drinks, so on and so forth. And all these things, right, are normal, right? This is a thing right here. They're so normal. So people say, well, why you're talking about these things? It's, this is what everybody does, right? But let's think about the word normal. The word normal doesn't have any indicator anywhere in the definition of the word that means good or bad. Normal, a more exact and definite definition of normal would be statistically most frequent. Think about that. Normal means statistically most frequent. It's mathematical. It just means that most people are doing that. It doesn't mean that it's good or bad, right? You have to look at it more closely to understand whether it's good or bad for you or not, right? But so because everybody does these things, right? Because everybody goes out on the weekend and has drinks, because everybody, orders fast food, because everybody's binge watching social media, because everybody, it's just normal. So it's okay. No, you don't automatically assign that it's okay just because it's statistically most frequent. Just because you see something around all the time that's being done doesn't mean that it's okay, right? That's that's not how that works. That's not scientific. That's not factual. That's not what normal means. And so this is a trap. It's a trap that you have to practice a certain type of self-defense, an emotional self-defense that comes down to sometimes an emotional warfare to fight against. Again, why am I'm using these terms? Well, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I'm a self-defense instructor and a fitness instructor, as well as a master hypnotist and clinical hypnotherapist, right? By training. These are things I've been doing for over 30 years now. So the, the way that you can apply this is you look at so many of the messages that are coming in from the outside, right? That's what we see. These things that are statistically most frequent, these things that are normal. And so instead of most of us, right, thinking for ourselves, we're just going along with it. And then should you be surprised to wonder why you don't have the results that you want? Now remember, my first my my first indication of good results is function over form, what you can do rather than how you look, right? Function should become over form, right? All those things that you want to do in life simply and easily in comparison, right? Being able to just simply take walks, or walk upstairs, pick up your groceries, get in and out of your car, play with your kids if you have them, or your pets. Having the energy to do those things, right? Function over form, right? But the just like in the movie Inception, right? We're having messages from the outside planted into our minds, and we're thinking that they're our own because we're not thinking for ourselves in this way and saying, hey, wait a minute. Just because everybody else is doing this, is this good for me? When are you? And again, this should not be mistaken for being superficial. This is a lot. I found that I have to be careful about my communication. Was something I learned also at the Hypnosis Motivation Institute. If you'd like to look at where I got my education from, it's hypnosis.edu, America's first nationally accredited college of hypnosis. But one of the things I learned in one of the classes on NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, was that your communication is only as good as the response that you get. And so sometimes the response that I've gotten is, well, that sounds superficial. You're saying that I have to, be muscular and fit and all this. No, 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 no. Function first, then form. I'm saying that the problem that most people are dealing with is they don't feel good. Right? That's simply, if we want to distill it down to the basics, what most people's struggle, their emotional warfare is they're not feeling good. And I'm saying that you can feel better and then take steps to feeling good if you fight against the inertia, the inertial forces that are causing you to simply just go with the flow, do what's normal, what's statistically most frequent, right? Because everybody's doing it, because everybody has, a venti white chocolate mocha at Starbucks every day. Everybody has pizza, every day. Everybody goes out to the bar and has multiple drinks with their friends. Right? So that's the emotional warfare. That's one of the main things, the messages that we're getting from outside. And if we observe those things carefully, we can start our own level of self defense against these things by simply saying, I'm going to stand apart from this thing and do what's actually feels good and helps me to feel better at first and then feel good and then feel great. And that comes with these difficult activities that we have to take. Like I was saying before, before we were hunter gatherers and foragers and hunters, right? Going out to get our energy, we were expending it. But now that's why we have gyms everywhere and we have all these fitness programs, because with our busy days, many people's 9 to 5s, right? We're sitting around and we're commuting, we're sitting in our cars. And so we're not putting out the energy to get the nutrition that we need. We're not as active anymore. So it's necessary for many people to do some kind of intense physical activity for 20 to 30 minutes a day. And you can do that at home. You can choose to do a gym. You can go for walks, so on and so forth. But it also has to be augmented, right, with getting enough rest. Now, why is that a problem? Again, a lot of those things that I've mentioned before, which are the binge watching things and the doom scrolling on social media, that steals a lot of time and it cuts into a lot of people's sleep time, right? Those are big, big things right there. And sleep, oh my goodness, is such, I dare say, a panacea for so many things. And I was keen to this for many years. I've done a lot of sleep research. Many years ago, I know on my website I dedicated a whole section of my blog articles to Sleep Awareness Week. And then just earlier this year, I read a book by Matthew Walker, PhD, who's a neurologist, a neuroscientist, called Why We Sleep, and confirmed all of the things that I've experienced in my life. Like, for example, I would often find myself becoming aware of the fact that if I was hungry or if I was physically fatigued from doing exercises, or even in the very rare in, instances, which every 4 to 6 years, where I would get like a cold or something like that, or whether it was hot outside or really cold outside, nothing stopped me from being active or performing at my best at all. Those things, I could get through them. I can get through weather. I could get through being previously fatigued. I could get through not eating as much. I could get through so many things. But one of the things that stopped me and hindered me the most was not getting enough sleep. That was the biggest thing. And so I implore you, one, I don't get any money from promoting Matthew Walker's book, but I would suggest getting. I mean, it's kind of heavy. I don't think it's written for the layperson, uh, but it is it is a good book. I've actually given out 2 copies of that to a couple of people that I've met. on my journeys and travels here. It actually is. I think there is a link to it on my website, World Reading Club, underneath the tab that says World Reading Club book list. Let me actually take a look at that. Is it on there? World Reading Club book list, simple physics, da da da, math book. Oh my gosh, there's so many stuff to have links to. I actually should put it on there, but it's a great book. That's all I'm saying. Why We Sleep, Matthew Walker. And so that's one of the things, right? Is that we fight against because we've become hypnotized to certain behaviors that are normal. Again, which doesn't mean they're good or bad. They're just statistically most frequent. The binge watching, the doom scrolling, a lot of things that I will just blanketly say are wasting time. But it's wasting time in a specific context, right? Because those things are fun. I mean, when before I go to sleep at night, I watch this show called The Big Bang Theory, and I've already watched it like 4 times over, but I just really like it because it has to do with there's a bunch of nerds like me on the show, right? But I do that after my whole day is done, right? I set it up, I put it on, I watch it, I laugh a little bit. Next thing you know, I go to sleep, and then my laptop automatically turns off because I have a timer. I don't want it going anymore while I'm sleeping, right? Um, Doom scrolling. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things on social media, but I just can't justify making the time for it because I have a lot of other things that I would rather be doing. And so it's just difficult. So what I'm saying here is prioritizing that time is something that we struggle with. It's a kind of a warfare, a struggle. And what's the trade-off? You're not getting enough sleep. You're not making the time to study, to focus on the nutrition that you need to be having, to get to the exercise you need to be doing, so on and so forth. If it's taking away from the time that you require to get other things done that are going to help you to feel better, eventually feel good, and then feel great, then maybe it should be excised, cut out, taken away from you, right? That's what the the point here is. What most people are struggling with, what now has been something that I'm seeing is abundant, is people are not feeling good. See, this is the thing, and what I'm finding is I feel like being mistaken by many people. I don't know if this next example is going to do it justice, but I think it's somewhat similar and related. There was a book I read many years ago, and then I also wrote my own thing about it that was called My Body's Many Cries for Water, but the book was called Your Body's Many Cries for Water by Feridun Batmangelish, who was an Iranian physician who found out some really interesting things about chronic dehydration. All right, but one of them was that when people aren't drinking enough water or water containing fluids like tea and things like that, that they feel hungry. And so they're mistaking their dehydration for hunger. When actually, if you would drink more water, then you wouldn't be so hungry. It's interesting. And so, in the same way, hopefully this analogy transfers, is that we're mistaking our desire to feel good for and thinking that that we want to look good, right? When actually, if you work on feeling better, and which leads to feeling good, then to feeling great by doing it the right way consistently, then you'll actually have transformations in your body, which I believe always should be secondary, right? Again, going back to why is that secondary? Because I've been around bodybuilders. I've had 2 girlfriends who were bodybuilders, one professional, one um, maybe more. I just like muscles, but it's also not the best thing for physical fitness. You might look a certain way, right? But they weren't flexible. They didn't have endurance, so on and so forth. It wasn't the most optimal activity, bodybuilding, for feeling better than feeling good than feeling great, right? And so to that point, a lot of people, again, what they're doing is they're going to the gym. You'll probably hear stuff like this in the gym. Well, today I'm going to do back and bis, and then tomorrow chest and tris, and then I got leg day, and then I got cardio, and then I got abs, right? And it's all this separating this stuff, right? That's how bodybuilders work out. And it's kind of nonsensical. I mean, maybe the cardio part is good, but also excessive cardio, a lot of that stuff can be cut out by, and this is my, not just my bias, but also my understanding, my expertise in seeing it, and also working with clients of all ages, people in their 80s, and also kids as young as 4 years old, right? And understanding the spectrum that doing full body compound movements, right? Things that are more natural, that use your whole body, gets the results more quickly. Right? More quickly. I talk about not taking shortcuts and not cutting corners and everything like that. But by learning and doing these compound movements actually feeds two birds with one seed, meaning you get your cardio and your resistance training exercise at the same time. So you're actually getting cardio training, building up the strength of your heart and lungs, your cardiovascular training, right? As well as the resistance training that's necessary to build your muscle strength and have that residual muscular tension, which is the muscle tone, as well as building the strength in your bones and everything else, right? So like, for example, here's some examples I'll give as what are some compound movements. Just from off my head, like when I do my workouts, sometimes one of the first things I'll do is I'll grab a couple of weights. It doesn't even have to be heavy. Sometimes I take 20 or 25 pounds and put one dumbbell in each hand. I'll stand up, arms to the side, and I'll do calf raises. And as I'm going up on my toes, I'll shrug my shoulders up. And as I'm putting my heels back down towards the floor, I'm rolling my shoulders back and putting my arms down. So up on my toes, shoulders shrug up, and then roll them back down. Right? That's a compound movement. I'm doing both upper and lower body at the same time. Then maybe one of the other things I'll do is I'll take those same weights and I'll separate my feet out and I'll extend my arms overhead, and then I'll squat down as low as I can and bring my arms down where my elbows are aligned with my shoulders, right? So now I'm in a squat, my arms are down, and as I stand up, then I press overhead. So I'm doing a squat and an overhead press at the same time. That's another compound movement. Another one that I'll do is I'll take those same weights, my arms are down to the sides, I'll go into a forward lunge, step 1 foot forward, and then I stand up and then I do a curl with both arms, and then I switch. Go into a lunge, arms go down, push back up into a standing position, and do curls. Again, more compound movements. And let's take a guest here. This is good for me to take a break. We have Wendy coming up to say hello. Hello, Miss Wendy Rodriguez. How do you do?
Hi, I'm good. I'm good. No, I love what you're saying. It's all about listening to your body and especially about hydration. I mean, we are mostly water, and you just cannot, that can't be emphasized enough. We have to replenish what we sweat out and blah, blah, blah. And it's super important. And I think that, I had some friends back in the day, I dated a kid who was way into water polo, and, you're using everything. You're using all of your body. And so you're not, hyper, concentrating on any muscle group or whatever. It's just what comes natural to like stay above water. And, those kids were in the best shape. And also I had some friends who were, volleyball players, serious volleyball players. And they kind of seem the same way. They're very proportionate as far as, they're very lean, but super muscular and just very overall healthy. And I think it's because they are kind of just working everything naturally. And I found in my own life, being an old lady, what you were saying about how you can use your muscle groups to their optimal, advantage, even climbing stairs or whatever, rather than like taking that like spring step. If you really want to, really just push yourself up and use gravity and everything and whatever. And there's tons of little things we can do during our day to just work on our muscle groups. And but I think that's how we were kind of supposed to be. And probably back when we depended way more on our bodies for our day-to-day living, we get away from that as we sit on our bums and do things. If we just get back to, you know, lifting things and concentrating on that bicep or concentrating on that tucking your tummy in and doing this or that, it really does help, or at least I find it does, at, again, my age.
Well, yeah, I agree with you about the water polo folks and maybe even volleyball. I have a lot
Mm-hmm.
more experience with I was on the swim team my senior year of high school, and I had a short stint as a volleyball player. And I do know swimming is an incredible exercise if you have access to a pool. But
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the reasons why I really enjoy practicing martial arts. It doesn't have to be flashy like the stuff that I do. I'm still doing backflips and crazy barrel roll 540 spins through the air and all this other stuff like that because it's
Wow.
fun and I'm going to do it as long as I can do it, right? You know,
Absolutely.
I'm 46 years old, but I'm like, if my body still let me do this without any pain and I'm not hurting myself, I'm going to do it because
Of
I
course.
love it. I like playing.
Yes.
So, but also dancing is an amazing
Mm-hmm.
exercise
Yes.
for your body. You know,
Absolutely.
but and that's what I like about like uh, the whole idea of calisthenics, using your own body and finding different ways to move your body in a way that's enjoyable. Because this is also what I'm talking about, the emotional warfare. A lot of times people get trainers and then start doing stuff and they don't stick with it because it's not fun. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I learned many years ago when I first got certified as a personal trainer with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. I'm no longer certified with them. I actually have my own fitness certification business, but they have some amazing things. And one of them was this acronym called FIT, FITTE, which said your exercises should be based on the frequency, intensity, the time, the type of exercise, and the last one, the E, was enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
Frequency, intensity, time, type, and enjoyment. And this is one of the reasons why we're not sticking to our exercise because it's just not fun. And also why people, when they go to the gym, they're watching like soccer on their mobile devices or they're doing something else that's completely not focused on them doing the exercise because it's not fun.
Right,
And
exactly.
that's
And that's kind of goes back to being present and being in the moment and all those things. But I know when I'm alone, I listen to a lot of music, and so my exercise routine, I walk lots, but I do that when it's cool. I'm in Florida, so you have to do it early or late in the evening, but early is better. And because it gets
oh, I
super
know.
hot.
I lived in Florida for 13 years, so I know.
Yeah, you need to hit it hard in the morning. But also I'll turn on music, and when I'm doing my routine during the day and stuff, just stop and do some silly dancing. And believe me, I dance like nobody's watching because nobody is, and nobody wants to. But just also take some of those that I kind of created a whole workout routine for myself, which was a little bit of Pilates, a little bit of bar, just whatever. If you do a little bit of repetition in a certain muscle group, that's fine. You look silly, nobody's looking at you, please. But the music's fun, and it works your overall being. And like you said, it's got to be fun. It's got to be fun, or we don't want to do it.
Yes. Well, I really do enjoy doing mat Pilates. I actually, many years ago, hired a woman named Heather Smith at a gym that I was also a trainer at, which was called Bodies in Motion at the time, but they've long gone out of business, to be my trainer for 6 months on the Pilates machines, all of the different apparatus they have, like the Wonder Barrel and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And but then I began teaching mat Pilates myself. I like mat Pilates because of the full body calisthenics that it puts you through, and I also have been teaching yoga since 2004 as well, and I love yoga for that. That it's also full body exercise, and many people don't know, it does not require you to do all kinds of crazy gymnastic looking movements. I actually
No,
teach
it doesn't.
yoga, and I have my own style called Dream Action Yoga, which is exposing the conditioned personality, because that's one of the main things I'm all about, which is like the title of this fitness: emotional warfare and self defense, which all really has to do with our emotional states and the way that we think about things. And again, those full body compound movements I really have from a lifetime of experience are, and are, from what I understand, the best way to go if people can manage it. You have to start where you are,
Mm-hmm.
but eventually working up to that is the best way, rather than those isolation movements where I'm going to do back and bis a day, chest and tris, and then I got legs, and then I got
Right.
abs, and then I got cardio. It's like, no, just figure out how to have
Right.
fun moving your body as a whole.
Exactly. It's all about fun, and you know what? Not worrying about what you look like. It's funny because I mean I've been a member of many gyms down here and stuff, but unfortunately I'm not one of those people who really gives a about how I look when I go into the gym or whatever. I just am there to have fun and do my thing, and I try to take away what whatever I can and enjoy it. I went to a yoga class with my daughter, and she's way into it, so she was way more advanced than me. And yes, I fully flipped myself backwards during the pose that it was a little more advanced than I should have been doing, and it was hilarious. Okay, I got a big laugh from everybody. It was our comic relief, and we went on with it. But it's fun. Laugh at yourself and have fun always. And yeah, I think the very strict, I have to do this today and this today. And when it becomes a burden, then it's not fun, and you're
Yeah.
not, and it's also not going to, because you want to do this stuff and you want your body to feel good so that it feeds into your mind. And if you're not being happy and enjoying it, then your frame of mind is not going to be happy, and whatever, it's
Yeah.
it's not going to feed both your body and soul kind of thing.
Well, Wendy, today I actually had a breakthrough in my fitness routine based on what you were just now saying. You feel like you have to do a certain thing every day. Well, I have certain things that I do that I was explaining earlier, where I do those compound movements. I do the shrugs, and then I do the lunges with the curls, and the squats with the overhead press, and then I have all this other sequence of movements that I do.
Mm-hmm.
But today I went in with that plan because tomorrow I have a session with my trainer, who I hired her so that she can just push me while I'm doing my kickboxing, so I don't slack off. Um, and I had this thing. I said, okay, I'm going to do my resistance today, but I just wasn't feeling it. And then I remembered, and this is shout out. A lot of people should look into this guy because he's amazing, and his he's inspired in large part what I discovered for myself today, and it's things that I've been doing before, and I've actually helped a lot of people with this. But he's called Knees Over Toes Guy.
Mm-hmm.
Knees Over Toes Guy, and you can find him on Instagram and YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing stuff. And the reason why I immediately clicked with what he was saying is because so a little background. A lot of times, fitness trainers, and even in the certification I've gotten, a lot of people tell you that, oh, it's dangerous for your knees and you're going to hurt yourself and rip tendons and all this stuff when you're squatting or lunging. Don't let your knees go past your toes. You'll hear that a lot. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
religion, it's a dogma in the fitness industry. Don't let your knees go past your toes. However, that never vibed with me because since 1993, right? So 31 years, I've been practicing capoeira. And one of the movements called esquiva, which means escape, I routinely was dropping down and my knees are way over my toes. And I'm in these really crazy these lunge positions where
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing that for years. And I have the strongest knees of almost anybody that I know.
That is
And then I
awesome.
found this guy, the knees over toes guy, and then he showed the rationale behind it and shows what he's done. This guy rehabbed himself. He blew out his knees. His coaches on basketball, told him he would never dunk a ball and all this other stuff like that. And then he figured it out for himself. And now you should see the guy's videos. He's just going from a full squat all the way down on the floor with his butt touching his heels. and jumping from the floor and dunking the ball. And I might add everybody's favorite joke,
Wow.
from the movie White Men Can't Jump, like Wesley Snipes
Yeah.
movie, right? But this is a white dude. Okay, sorry everybody, that's my little joke for right
I'm
now.
sorry. Coming
And
from
he,
that position, yeah.
yeah, but this is a guy who has had knee surgery,
Uh-huh.
and his coaches told him he wouldn't be able to dunk and he wouldn't be able to play basketball, and he rehabbed himself by doing these exercises. So one of the exercises, he has several of them, but the one that I started practicing because it was most easily accessible to me, and of course I understand that most people don't have this accessible to them, but you can modify things because, for example, I would fill up gallon bottles of water, those
Mm-hmm.
gallon jugs, and I would use those as weights, filling them up to different levels, making sure they were both even, or even just using one and using that as my weights. Um, and so you don't need to, have like fancy equipment or the gym for this. I mean, like when I was on the road, one of the things that I did was I took a bunch of stuff that I had and I put them on an old piece of carpet that I found, and I would go out onto the grass or at the beach in Florida when I was down there. I was working there back in fitness, self-defense, exercising your mind, fitness, self-defense, exercising your mind, fitness, self-defense, exercising your mind. I'm just going to briefly wrap up here. I previously was on with fitness, emotional warfare, and self-defense, and then somehow the app, it crashed or something like that. So I actually don't know how much it was recorded. I heard the beginning of it did actually sound pretty good, so I'm glad about that. But now that I've had the time to rant about that, fitness, emotional warfare, and self-defense, I am glad that I did that because it's helped me to synthesize, and which is, by the way, a little secret. One of the reasons why I podcast is because it helps me to work out a lot of ideas that have been bubbling up in my subconscious. And I see a few of you have jumped back, Davina, June E, Jennifer Bailey, and Mojo. But it cut off, and I now that, as I said, I had some time to go through that, I can distill this into a few main points here. Right, number one of the fitness self-defense issues that many people are having is that we're fighting against ourselves rather than fighting nor- against normal, right? That's what we should be fighting against, is what's normal or what is statistically most frequent. Unless, here's the caveat, unless it's actually beneficial to you and others around you. So if, because the main thing that many of us, and I can speak personally and from many people that I've interviewed and spoken to as a fitness trainer and self-defense instructor, a clinical hypnotist for many years, is that it boils down to the fact that we just want to feel good, right? So that's number one. You have to establish what your goal is. You want to feel good, right? If you don't want to feel good, then there's no reason to be listening to this. You can, if it feels good for you to doom scroll on social media or binge watch stuff all the time, then that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. That's not what this is about. This is fitness, self-defense, and maybe the things that are fighting against you or you're fighting against yourself to not get these things to happen. But if we establish that it's true for you, that you want to feel good, right, then you should understand that is your approach to your fitness journey and how you should be exercising your mind, right? Which is to understand that if you still are a little bit, and dare I say, tainted by the idea that you have to look a certain way, which this is a little bit complicated here because you actually end up looking better when you first start off with the goal of feeling better, right? Maybe that might be a little too metaphysical for some of you, but that's actually what it is. And it's actually really more practical and pragmatic than it might sound, because it's not and I've been, trust me, I know all about Uji Buji, airy fairy, new age stuff because I spent most of my life working on that. I even have a doctorate degree in metaphysical sciences, so I get, even though I've hijacked it and wrote it mostly about something I call astroneuronautics, which is uh, using my lucid dreams to explore astronomy and physics. But that's a whole nother thing for another day. But but the whole thing is the approach, right? What are we fighting against? What do we need to build our self-defense against? It's the outside information that pulls us away from our main goal, which is to first start by feeling good in our bodies. That's the first approach. And that leads to function over form, meaning that your activity should be geared towards you feeling better to be able to do things in life. Simple things, right? Walking, climbing up stairs, picking up your groceries, picking up your children, ta spending time with your children, walking your pets, getting in and out of your car, getting in and out of your bed, getting up from your sofa, right? Just things that you normally do in life, right? The things that are statistically most frequent for you to do in life, right? One of the things that I do part time, usually at night, is I drive Uber. And I noticed people that have a certain physical makeup, I noticed that them not even doing anything, that their breathing is labored, and they're constantly breathing as if they were doing like a workout. And that's because of the composition of their body. I can't imagine that that feels good. And I don't think that anybody really wants to feel bad like that, that just simply walking 5 feet from a bench into the backseat of a car, that you're breathing like that. Like I, I'm sure that that's not a good feeling, to that you're just moving around feels labor. But I'm not here to criticize and say that that's a bad thing. Everybody has a different path in life, and everyone has gotten to the place where they are in many different ways and for many different reasons, right? We all are where we are, and all we have to do is start with what you really want. And I'm assuming that most people on their fitness journey, they want to feel good. And the point that I made earlier, which is, I think, a really good one, is that sometimes we mistake the truth of what we really want to feel good with thinking that we want to look good. That's because that's what society is telling us. And I'm asserting that this is part of the self-defense that we should be practicing, which is to find ways to focus by putting up a shield, by deciding what it is that you really want. You want to feel good first, and that leads to the looking good. I call this function over form. Most people are looking for form over function, and that is an approach that is not sustainable. It doesn't provide longevity, and you ultimately won't be feeling good because you're constantly going to be looking to see if you, like, we all know it, right? We've seen how social media has transformed over the years, right? It's bled over. I lived in China for 5 years, and it was as if I left the United States and I saw a lot of things, very interesting things happen. One was when I left the United States in 2016 to go live in China with the wonderful, beautiful, amazing, talented, intelligent Flora Elizabeth Carrasco, that gambling was illegal in most places, especially even like they couldn't advertise, and there was a whole bunch of stuff. There was like all these regulations. I come back and there's commercials for it. I mean, I was, even when I was in California, I was an actor in a commercial for gambling, right? So many things changed. Also, the thing, maybe I just didn't notice it before, but when I was in China, everybody on social media is doing the same thing. It's women are just like taking pictures with mostly their butts. Like everybody's obsessed with their butt now. It's like the butt pictures, like they're turned the, the selfies, looking over their shoulder, and their butt is the main thing of the picture, right? It's just like, so we know that I know from this anecdotal evidence, from looking at this all over the world, right, that most people are looking at it from that perspective. They're looking at form over function. They're trying to get the form first, right, over the function, which is one of the main reasons why so many people are going for plastic surgery, and why people take steroids, and why people are getting liposuction, and why people are taking these quick fixes and pills and things like that. Because the analogy I made earlier was from the physician Feridun Batmangelish. I think it's interesting that his name has the word Batman in it. That's but it's he found that when people are chronically dehydrated, right, that that they feel hungry, that this chronic dehydration leads to feelings of hunger, and they're mistaking their chronic dehydration for hunger, when in reality they're thirsty. And so this is the main thing about the what people are mistaking, is they're looking for form over function when it should be function over form. And it's the same thing as like mistaking being hungry when you're actually really thirsty, right? So again, start from the function first, right? Which again, we go back, where's what I was saying before, starts with we want to feel good. And again, as I say, that actually, in my experience, leads to what people think is the looking good, the form. A personal example of this is I got really depressed. I was living in China. Flora went to New York to visit her family. She passed away. 7 months, I drank myself to sleep. That's all I did. I found that there's this stuff in China called baijiu. It's horrible. It's very strong alcohol. It's a white liquor. Bai means white. Jiu means wine, but it's not a white wine. It's more like a vodka. It's disgusting. That when I think about it, it makes me shudder. It's gross. But when I finally decided to start getting back fit, I realized I was heavier than I'd ever been in my life. You know, at my biggest, when I looked like I was a bodybuilder, but I never was. I was always a martial artist that just lifted weights a lot. I was 185 pounds when I was competing in amateur MMA, and I was just jacked. I looked like a machine, but a martial arts machine, right? But that was the heaviest I was. Now, when after all of this drinking and all this stuff like that in China, I was 221 pounds. And so what I did was I didn't focus on trying to get the abs back, or trying to get the biceps, or isolating the muscles to try to go for the form. What I did was I did what I knew was best for me. I just started taking my time, getting back into doing a kickboxing workout, right? I got some gloves. I got a mouth guard because I practiced with that while I'm training, and I just started working on the bag, started doing basic combinations: jab, cross hook, uppercut, push kick, round kick, side kick, as much as I could. And I rested and took my time. See, I was going for the function. I wanted to get back to doing what felt good. And by doing that, guess what happened? All of a sudden, now I have this 8-pack abs. My chest, my arms, my legs, everything's looking all slim and trim and cut and muscular. But that's not what I was going for. I just wanted to do the stuff that I was doing before. That's what happened, is I went for the function and the form came. The form followed. So that is the assertion there. We have to fight. The self-defense here is against this idea of thinking that your first goal should be, I have to look good, because that usually comes from looking good for other people on the outside. I dare say that most of us do not necessarily want the looking good part right away. We need to feel good. And that feeling good actually is a self-confidence booster. You see, when I started getting back to the cardio, right, when I had the endurance to then move from being able to just hit the bag for a couple minutes before I had to stop, and I'm dripping sweat everywhere, to the point where I got up back to where I was doing 5 minute rounds with a 1 minute break in between. It was fun. I was like a little kid. I'm like jumping around and punching and kicking the bag and doing all this stuff and doing all these moves, and it felt easier, right? It was apparently to me easier. It wasn't that it was easier. I was just getting stronger and more endurant, right? My body became more efficient at doing the thing that I wanted to do, and I was feeling good. And then my body transformed back again because I was doing what felt good. That is the key there, to understand that what we're mistaking, right? We're mistaking our thirst for hunger, right? And that analogy that I said, that when people are chronically dehydrated, they tend to feel more hungry, right? But it's, so we're mistaking the thirst is actually what we really want, is to feel good, right? But we feel like we're hungering after looking good. We're feeling like we want to go for the form, but it's really the function that we need to start with. We start with the function. And it's interesting, mathematically even, right? By performing calculations and functions, right, then you can find all kinds of different forms from them. But let me not geek out on that. That's not. But I dare say once again that I really believe and understand from experience that what we're looking for is to feel good. Again, write that down. Commit that to your mind. You want to feel good, right? And so start doing the things physically, being active, that feel good and are fun at the same time, right? Do you like rollerblading or ice skating? Do you like skateboarding? Do you like jumping rope? Do you like swimming? Do you like dancing? Do you like martial arts? Do you like lifting weights? Do you like doing gymnastics? I mean, what, something physical, taking walks, going jogging, playing tennis, or the big thing now is pickleball that everybody loves to do, right? Whatever it is that's fun for you, start working slowly. If you haven't done for a while, right? You got to do increments. You got to go in gradations, right? But start where you are and take your time to start feeling good doing that thing again, if it's possible for you, because not everybody, some things because of life gets in the way, or injuries, or this and that, some things we can't do. But find something where you can start where you are and get up to feeling good doing that. And I, I can say with great confidence that by getting back into that function of being able to do that, being able to feel good doing the things, the form that you want will begin to follow. Now, again, that's a way oversimplification of things, because it requires you also getting enough sleep, which is a big problem for most people, right? And then getting the right food into your body and being properly hydrated, right? Those are the main things. I'll stop at four, right? Is is great. We have to have physical activity, the proper fuel, which is nutrition for that, sleep to recover both our body and our mind. Sleep, I mean, there's mental health problems, all kind of stuff. People get meaner and more depressed and more anxious, and all kinds of stuff happens to us when we're not sleeping enough. But it's also, it all across the board. When you're not sleeping, you feel hungrier. It shuts off the hormones in your body. I'll call leptin, which comes from the word lep, that has the word lepsis in it, right? Like in the Greek word that, like where we say um, uh, epilepsy, right? Seize. The word lepsis means to seize, right? To stop, right? Where we get neuroleptic, which are the antipsychotic drugs, nerve seizing drugs, right? So this hormone in your body, leptin, stops you from feeling hungry. Whereas if you don't sleep enough, that there's less of that and more of something called ghrelin, which makes you feel hungry. Sleep does so many things. It also, if you don't sleep enough, there's a bunch of neuronal issues. I talked about earlier about getting the book by Matthew Walker called Why We Sleep. Check it out. My own experience tells me the same thing. But and then of course hydration, which is part of, I can just group that nutrition. So we have three things there, right? Physical fitness, it has to be fun. It has to be interesting to you, or something you're going to stick with, you're going to do. And then you have to fill your body right with the right hydration and nutrition, and then you got to get enough sleep. And for some reason, Those things we're fighting against all the time. We're fighting against doing those things because there's all kinds of distractions that are fighting for our attention. And I'm going to stop here. I got stuff that I want to do, but this reminds me of something that I've also been thinking a lot about before. When I just said fighting for our attention, and this is a good one because I've also noticed the transformation that it has imparted to me in a very short period of time. I was speaking to Cecilia Grace earlier when she was talking to Coach Shannon, um, and how I've become a lot more efficient. Even today, I discovered a new efficient way to work out for myself, for my own function. And it's that term I said, things fighting for your attention, right? We've often heard that time is money, right? And then also we've heard the term pay attention, right? Well, I found an interesting connection that I like to make with that. It's a linguistic one, but it's also very interesting for our thoughts, our emotional health, and a good thing to meditate on. I found that the things that if time is money, right? It actually takes time to pay attention to things, right? Like these things I talked about earlier. When you're paying attention to the social media stuff and doom scrolling, when you're paying attention, giving your attention to your time, right? Equivalent money, you're paying attention to these things that may not be productive towards the goal of you feeling better than feeling good than feeling great, right? What happens when you pay for something, right? Usually, hopefully, unless you're getting ripped off, you receive that for which you are paying for. Paying attention is another way of saying spending time. Again, listen to that, spending time, right? Time, money. These things are all interesting. It's maybe a different kind of currency, but it's a currency nevertheless. So if you're paying attention to things that are not conducive to you feeling better, again, if you didn't hear this before, I have professional training as a clinical hypnotist, a master hypnotist, neurolinguistic programming, all those things from the Hypnosis Motivation Institute, Tarzana, California. You should look them up, hypnosis.edu, right? But if you are paying attention to certain things, that is what you're going to get as your product, your service that you're getting to your body. There's a saying that I also learned in from the NLP teachers that says, and some of you may have heard this before, that we become the sum total of the 5 to 7 people that we spend our time with. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean, I found, right, by practicing this, doesn't necessarily mean that the people that you necessarily are around, because you're not paying attention to everybody that you're around. There are people like your parents or certain friends or coworkers or whoever it is that they might be talking, but they might as well be like the teachers and the adults in Peanuts. And it's wah, 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 right? Charlie Brown. But you're not paying attention to them. There's other things that you're paying attention to, right? But you have to select your paying attention. See, I found that, for example, I pay a lot of attention to, you may have heard he's one of the world's foremost science communicators ever, is Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? But I don't know him personally, but I pay a lot of attention to him. I listen to his podcast probably between 6 to 8 hours a day while I'm doing other stuff. And I learned so much from that, as well as Sabine Hossenfelder, who is a theoretical physicist from Germany, and also Veritasium, which is also run by another physicist, and on and on and on. That's the things that I'm interested in, right? That's what I pay my attention to. But by paying that, like when you pay tuition to a school, right? Hopefully, if you're paying attention in school, you're going to be getting that education. And so you have the ability to choose the 5 to 7 people or institutions or channels that you're paying attention to, because that which you are paying attention to is what you're going to receive. You've purchased that with your time. Time is money. You're spending your time on that. And it's also one of the ways that I've become so much more efficient at so many things because of what I'm paying attention to all day long. And I get so much more done because of that. This is not a, a negative verdict on what your behaviors and what your habits are. It's a call for you to perhaps rethink what you're paying attention to, because if it's not serving the goals for you to feel better than to feel good and then to feel great, right? Because you could be spending a more concrete example of that is, right, I've become completely straight edge. I did this. I don't, if you don't know what the term is, means I don't do any drugs or alcohol or cigarettes or anything like that at all, right? It wasn't always the case. Throughout the years, I've experimented with all kinds of stuff. I first drank alcohol when I first had my first marijuana cigarette when I was 17. I drank first when I was 19. I was in a death metal band at the time, and at the bars we played at, they would give us alcohol. Then around the same time, my best friend, he was a drug dealer, and he gave me all the acid and ecstasy that I wanted. Um, and then and after I let go of all that stuff, I just drank and smoked and got cigarettes and all that stuff like that. But I didn't have to go to any programs. I didn't go to AA or any of these other things like that. It's just that when I started paying attention to different things and started having a different purpose and goal, for some reason, those things just fell to the wayside. A lot of it had to do with what I was paying attention to, and I just didn't have any time for it anymore. I could not spend my time on it anymore. It was impossible. I'll get a little biblical. I'm not Christian or anything, but although I am an ordained minister, but it's a non-religious, it's a spiritual ordination that I got from a church in California called Wisdom of the Heart Church. But from the Christian Bible, or at least something that was uh, mined from there, and I think there was this verse that said, "You cannot serve two masters; you cannot serve both God and Mammon." Right? I just no longer have the time to spend on going out to buy alcohol or vape things, those, or all that stuff, because I'm spending my time on other things. And in a more direct way, right? I'm not spending my money on alcohol. I'm spending my money on this omega trail mix, right? Or this chicken salad that I'm eating, or green tea, right? And because I'm not spending my money on alcohol or vape pens or cigarettes or weed, all that stuff like that, I have more time, more money to spend on these healthy things. But it wasn't even me trying to stop doing that. I wasn't trying to stop smoking weed or cigarettes or vapes or drinking alcohol. No, it didn't. It wasn't a thought. My thought was, I want to feel good. And so I started by feeling better. And that was getting myself disciplined, staying on my exercise routine, and then getting better sleep, and then doing breathing meditations first thing in the morning when waking up, and then setting goals. And then now I'm studying every day and finishing up 2 doctorate degrees and going to the gym all the time and playing music and just, and some people might think, my God, that do you ever, you know, one of the things I've heard from some people sometimes is, which is, again, this self-defense I've had to put up is, why don't you live a little, have a piece of cake, or, have fun? I'm like, to me, that's not living a little. That's killing myself a little bit more. I don't need that stuff. It doesn't feel good to me. I've tried it. I've done the experiments. I've said before, I had an experiment that I ran called FAST, Food Awareness Subjective Testing. I don't feel good eating a load of cake or all junk foods and things. That it doesn't feel good. I don't like the way that potato chips feel in my teeth. I don't like the way that cookies do, or any of that other stuff like that. I'm not saying anybody should do any of this stuff like that. It doesn't feel good to me. It's because I started spending my time on certain things. I did not have that that temporal currency, and even the monetary currency. I just couldn't justify spending it on other things that weren't helping me to feel better, then feel good and feel great. So I've hammered that point there, but it's the spending time. Time is money of different kinds. It's a different currency in different ways. It can be monetary currency, but it could also be your spiritual and emotional currency. Who are the 5 to 7 people and institutions or pieces of information that you're spending your time on? You're going to become the sum total of all of those things. So if you're watching these videos online where people are just taking pictures of their butts and they're working and they are saying that form is where you should go, then they're leading you into a way where they're focusing on form, which leads to all kinds of emotional distress for people because people start bugging out about, I don't look like her or him, and all this other fake stuff that people are seeing, when instead, I assert that you, uh, I know this word should, but you should be focusing on feeling better, which will help you feel good and feel great, which is form over function is the way that people are driving you to. You should flip that and look for function over form, the way that you feel in your everyday activities. And a lot of that, mainly, and this is really what this whole exercising your mind and what the fitness self-defense really is all about. I can nearly guarantee that if you start feeding into your brain, when you start feeding into your mind those things that are geared towards healthy habits, it will begin to change you from the inside out because it's functional over form. It's feeling good rather than just chasing the aesthetics, right? And again, I understand that my communication is only good as the response that I get. So I understand that sometimes when I say this, next thing I'm going to say that people get offended, but it's a point that I need to make when saying this. It's very easy to, well, I mean, I wouldn't say so. I've never had any surgeries, but it seems like a quick fix for people to get a surgery or a liposuction or to take some pills or to uh, to buy clothes or makeup or brand names in order to cover up the outside. This is superficial, right? What again you're really seeking is feeling good. And if you really think about it, spending your money and your time on seeking those superficial things, which are the form, it's not going to be as long lasting. It's not going to give you the longevity, the foundation of what you really are seeking, which is feeling better and feeling good. And with the technology that we have, you may be listening to this on your mobile device or a tablet. And if you're choosing to do that if you've chosen at any point in time to listen to this message, right, then that's one of those things that is essential because you're listening to information, you're spending your time, right? Your time is money or currency of some kind, emotional, spiritual, right? Even physical, if you want to count the sound waves that are going through the air in your devices, vibrating your tympanic membrane to turn into signals into your brain, right? It's all of those things. It's spiritual, emotional, and physical that you're spending your time, and what you're receiving is information that's one of those steps towards how you're going to feel better, to improve your life, that physical fitness level, which is interesting because of the fact that we have to, regardless of what your spiritual or religious leaning is, you have a physical body that you're spending time on this earth in. And I know that being healthier, getting better sleep, drinking water, right kind of foods, and exercising, I actually think better. My thoughts are clearer. My memory is better. On and on and on. Emotional. All of that stuff follows in the body that we have to live in on this earth. right? It helps everything. It helps me meditate more, clarify myself spiritually, emotionally, all of those things. So it seems to make sense to me that we really clarify, and this is where I'll land this ship here, what what it is that I'm asserting that we really are all looking for. We want to feel good. We want to feel great. And we start with that. Then we start doing things that we enjoy. And from the physical fitness perspective, finding an activity that you can do, whether it be dancing, skating, walking, swimming, any of those things, going to the gym, lifting weights, riding your bicycle, one of my favorites, right? Something that you enjoy and that you can do every single day, or you mix it up. You do certain things every day, right? That function, when you get good feeling that function and you're doing it on a consistent basis and in the right way, right? Where you're not hurting yourself and overdoing it. That is where all of this starts. What you're paying attention to, who you're listening to, what you're watching, what you're feeding into your thought space. That's the beginning of all of this. I'd like to say thank you for whoever has bounced on through and sat a spell, or some of you have come through before while I was talking, and I appreciate that. I looked at the statistics of that, and I was uh, kind of amazed that it was a lot of long listeners. But I'd like to say hello to Davina, June E, Jennifer Bailey, Mojo's in the house, Doobie, Maria Quinones, Beth Noble, Jeff Cook, Peggy Caruso, let's see, it's DM Kalirum, Undefined, George Russell, Elise Cook, God's Grace, Nona Hall, Tova. Hey, Tova, what's up? Waylon Unruh, Claire Salidi, Paul Allen, Laura Strader, and Rachel Nemeth. I did my best to pronounce those. I'm not as bad as Chuck Nice, who's the guest on Neil deGrasse Tyson Star Talk. We can't pronounce anybody's names at all. But that's it. What is our fitness self-defense? What does that come down to? The exercising your mind is paying attention. Think about how those terms fit together. I think it's a great exercise to meditate on, is thinking about how the terms pay attention and time is money and spending time, how those things are related, right? And it's this very simple thing right here. And I'll be going over this more and more and more as I do more talks and come back to Noom Vibe more regularly, is when you spend your money on something, you're buying a product or a service, and that's what you get, right? So it then makes cents and dollars for you to carefully choose what you're paying attention to, especially when it comes to your fitness and your personal health journey. So think about that. Paying attention, time is money, spending time. How all those things fit together? Remember, in direct and indirect ways, you become the sum total of the 5 to 7 people you spend your time with. Whether that be people you spend time with in a distance, whether it's reading a book, listening to a talk or a podcast, or watching videos, right? That's what you're going to get back into your life. I've accelerated my spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical health this way, and I know that it can work for you as well. Thanks again for all of you who have sat with me this time here, and I see Jermaine Bowman and Aleftina Smith joined. Hello and welcome, and I'll catch you guys next time. Stay well.